you might know, if you watch this channel, I avoid showing graphic images of any animal abuse, and I just don't think it's helpful to actually traumatize people while making a point that it's not about treatment, it's about use. So I don't show graphic animal images and whatever. But I accidentally saw in these clips of the police, brutalizing people, and it was showing their mentality. And of course, we're generalizing. I'm sure there must be good cops in the United States. There has to be, hopefully. But so let's assume there is. But anyway, there are, and I think there's more than a few bad cops, more than a few. Probably, in fact, the majority might be in there for the wrong reasons. Certainly not to protect the public. But anyway, this isn't about the police now. This is about something I saw, which I'm going to make a quick point about. So they showed the police officer, and I saw this from a distance it was on Twitter, so it wasn't a expanded video, so I couldn't really see all that properly. But what I saw was the police, there was an animal coming across the road. It looked like a fluffy sort of I don't think it was a raccoon, but it looked like something like that, but it was low to the ground, and it was going across the road. So it was some sort of a herbivore of some kind, or some sort of a fruit-eating animal or something. So anyway, this animal was going across the road, and it was about, I don't know, this long. It's about this long. And so all the cars had stopped on the freeway for this animal. They'd stopped. And this animal was going across, sort of low to the ground. It was frightened. When the policeman stopped the cars, I don't know if they stopped of their own accord or he stopped them, almost as the animal was almost at the side of the road, he shot the animal. I think pretty much dead. I'm not sure, but the animal was mortally injured, basically. Or, and he probably would have shot him again. I had to look away because I didn't expect that was going to happen. I happened to be flicking through Twitter, and you know how things autoplay and stuff. So I happened to see that really unfortunate thing, which I find very upsetting. I find anybody whether they're humans or non-humans, being brutalized or killed, extremely upsetting, and I avoid watching animals being tortured and killed and in slaughterhouses and all that sort of thing, because I don't need to see that. I know what goes on. And the only reason I might watch some of, say, police brutality or whatever is because I want to get an idea of what's happening or what has taken place so that I can talk about it if I need to talk about it. But I try to avoid that because I sort of get a bit of PTSD over it all. It's just not good for me. I'm a sensitive person. What can I say? I don't fare well with the sort of violence that's happening in the world today. It's not very good for my mind. I don't think it's very good for anybody's mind particularly. I can't even watch I can't really even watch particularly violent TV shows anymore. Not that I was ever into that, but I tend to try and avoid violent shows, and it's just not good for me. And I think there's enough violence in the world. I don't need to add to it in my own mind. So I saw this, and of course that's somebody's put that up there as a demonstration. They were going to show another one with a dog. I'm sure they were going to shoot the dog as well, but I just looked away and sort of turned it off. So people get very upset when they see things like that, and rightly so, because it's a really awful thing to see. This sweet little animal coming across the road, and it's scared to death because there's all these cars there, these big machines making a lot of noise, and there's this man in front of them, and they're trying to get to safety, and then the next thing, that man shoots them. So people get very upset about it. And what I find interesting, the point I'm going to make here is, and it's going to be a short point, if that's possible for me. We see somebody just killing an animal in, cold blood or whatever you want to call it, for no reason. There wasn't any reason to do that. The animal was going to get across the road. It wasn't any harm to anybody. It's not like it was a lion or a tiger that was going to kill him or anything else, anybody else. This animal was just wanting to get across to safety, and they killed them, and they didn't have to. Now, what point am I going to make here? The point is that the animals, and yes, there's a vegan message in here, we get so upset seeing that, and yet the animals on our plates, the animal products, the meat, the dairy, the eggs, etc., that's on our plate all represents animals who are just like that little animal who is innocent and just loves life, doesn't want to die, is afraid to die. And just like that animal that police officer killed for no good reason, really, just because he could. We're in the same position where we don't need those animal products at all to survive, and I've said this before. We can easily meet all our nutrition requirements from plants and other non-animal sources. So the only reason we're eating those animal products, and we've put all those animals through a slaughterhouse and all the torture and all of that that goes with all those forms of animal use, the only reason is because we think they taste good. We think they taste good. That's the only reason that those animals were just killed, because we can, because we've decided they're resources for us, they're property, and we have decided we can use them. And by the way, this is just faux fleece. It's not real. We've decided we can use them, and so we do, because they can't fight back against us. They don't have any. They're powerless, just like all the police and their abuse of power, the power they have. We are abusing our power to exploit and to torture and kill. That's what we're doing. And all those animal products are a result of tremendous violence and injustice. So that police officer didn't need to kill that animal at all. That animal was just trying to live and get through and get by across the road. But he did because he could, because he felt like it. Because it's just he's a coward and it's a misuse of power. And he's a bully. And here we are. We're in the same sort of a circumstance. We're not the killing hand, but we put those animals there in those large confined areas, whether it's free range, which is industrial too, or enriched cages, which is industrial as well, whether it's just the normal big industrialized things that people go on about as if that's going to ever end. It's never going to end, because populations are increasing and the demand for animal products is increasing. So economically efficient ways to raise animals is these big industrialized farms. So the only way to stop that, factory farming in quotes, is to go vegan. So we put all those animals through all of that because we think they taste good. And yet a plant-based diet is absolutely delicious, and you can get, if you need to get alternatives to different things, there's more and more alternatives if you like those faux animal products, the fake ones. But most people, when they go vegan, they might transition through that, but then they realize how fantastic a plant-based diet is. A balanced plant-based diet is just fantastic, and it's so healthy, and it's absolutely yummy. There's hundreds of thousands of recipes, literally, online. The comparison is that police officer didn't need to do that to that innocent animal that just wanted to live. He did that because he could, which is basically a human supremacist position. And white supremacy and human supremacy share the same ignorance, that it's an otherizing of an individual, simply because they're another species in the case of non-human animals, or in the case of black and brown people, they're another race. In the case of LGBT people, they're another gender or sexual orientation. All of that, it's all based on a relevant criterion. Those people, those animals, we all belong to the same moral community, and difference makes no difference, really. It's an irrelevant criterion that animals are another species. We have them in our moral concern because everybody is shocked when they see that little animal running across the road, and then that cold-blooded killing in front of all those people that were happy to stop for that little animal. And that's an individual case, and often people will intervene to stop people from being cruel to non-human animals when they see them like that in that situation, or being beaten or whatever. And yet all this kind of stuff goes on behind those big walls, those windowless sheds with the hundreds of thousands of animals. In the case with the COVID pandemic, being baked to death because there's excess animals, not enough animals, too many animals that can get to the slaughterhouses to be processed, in quotes, to be tortured and killed. So they bake them to death in these big windowless warehouses, because that's the economically efficient way to get rid of excess animals. Or they put carbon dioxide in there, and all the animals panic and suffocate slowly over hours. That's the economically efficient way to get rid of those excess animals. You see where I'm going with this? And we're doing all of those things, and there's too many awful things that I could talk about, too many. And the reason I'm vegan is because there's no such thing as non-abusive use of animals. And when you recognize that sentience is all that matters, even if there were such a thing as non-abusive use of animals, it would still be wrong. It would still be morally wrong to do that. So they're both cases where we are horrified at a police officer shooting that animal just like that, taking their life just like that. And yet, every single day, we're consuming animal products where those animals their lives are being taken just like that. And they're terrified, and they don't want to die. And they went through all that torture too beforehand, the horrific things that are done to them before they get to the slaughterhouse. And sometimes it's the only day where they actually get out in the sun because they're being taken to the slaughterhouse in a slaughterhouse truck. And that's an awful journey because they're never given any water or food because they want them to have an empty stomach when they're murdered. You see what I'm saying? It's so awful, isn't it? I'm sure you can appreciate how awful this is that we're participating in this and we don't have to. Just like that police officer didn't have to kill that animal. But he did it because he could. We don't have to eat animal products at all, but we do so because we can. We don't have to enslave and exploit those animals in the fields or in those big windowless sheds. We do so because we don't have to look at it. We don't have to look at what goes on in the slaughterhouses. We don't have to look at what goes on in those windowless sheds or in the fields, children being taken from their mothers in the fields and all that kind of thing. We don't have to see any of that. It's all kept away from us. The whole thing is very sterilized, so we don't have to think about it. We don't have to think about it. I think about it because I'm vegan. I think about it every day. I try not to think about it because it's really, really difficult to live on a planet that every single moment of every single day there's thousands of animals being killed for the same sort of ridiculous, unnecessary reason that policeman killed that animal. Because we can do it. Because we ignore their sentience because it's inconvenient. But we recognize their sentience when it's convenient, like that little animal crossing the road. We know that animal loves life. We know that that animal is sentient, and that police officer took that animal's life. Totally unnecessarily, he did that. Because he could. It was a human supremacist action. So we get upset about that. We get upset about seeing that. And yet that's going on every second of every day. Thousands just like that little animal. Thousands every second, globally. Just think about that. As every second ticks along, 1,000 or more animals tortured and killed for completely unnecessary reasons. And don't get me started about the destruction of animal agriculture on the planet, the climate crisis, the destruction of the oceans. There's so many things that's wrong with animal use, so many. But the most important thing is we don't have the right to use them and look upon them as if they're things and have this human superiority, as somehow we're better because they're not like us. Where have we heard that before? I'm better than you because you're not like me. We're better than them because they are not like us. It's all faces of the same ignorance. They're all forms of ignorance that cause violence, and where you have one form, you'll have all forms. So we have to get rid of speciesism in ourselves and go vegan. That's the way to get rid of it, to go vegan and stop using them this way, simply because we can, and that is related to the other forms of violence, racism, sexism, heterosexism, and so forth. They're all related. So when this world is mostly vegan, there might be a real shift, maybe, in these other forms of discrimination. Because if you are reluctant to mistreat, if you're reluctant to kill, if you're reluctant to torture, if you're reluctant to exploit and exert your power over the most vulnerable on the planet, which non-human animals are, they're the most vulnerable on the planet, and the largest group that we victimize and exploit and kill. If we're reluctant to do that, then we may be reluctant to exploit and brutalize vulnerable groups of humans. So we address all kinds of problems when we start to realize what we're doing to the most vulnerable group on the planet. So please go vegan. Check out my vegan resource in podcast form, howtogovegan.org. Thanks so much for watching. My name's Trish Roberts. You're watching Faint Signals from Vega. Please think about going vegan. Please drop a line to me in the comments section if you need some assistance. Check out my vegan resource. Thanks for watching. Till next time, you're watching Faint Signals from Vega. Bye for now.